Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hellacious Hero Returns. This is CinemAsian episode 6 with Sanimation05. What's up, Sanne?
I'm good.
Today we're talking
How
about
I should be asking, how are you?
I'm great. Now that I got all my sorry about the delay, guys. I had some technical difficulties with this ancient computer I have. But as you guys know, if you read the title of this and you've seen some of the stuff that Sanne and I have been posting on Instagram, this stream is about Enter the Dragon, the action martial arts classic with the legendary Bruce Lee. Wow. And where do we begin with this movie? Sanne, you and I have been talking about it for a little over a week now, so tell me about your experience with the movie before we actually dive into the story and the synopsis and give like a summary of it. What's your experience with the movie? What's it mean to you? When did you first see it? What do you think of it?
It means a lot to me. As I told you yesterday or earlier this week, my mom was a big Bruce Lee fan, so rest in peace, Mom, and thank you. She was like, it was either Disney films or martial arts movies, and she really loved Bruce Lee, so she had the 5 videotapes of Bruce Lee, and then, she would hook it in. She was like, oh, watch this. Oh my goodness. Like all of the movies are just awesome. But Enter the Dragon, it hits a level of more awesome than the other ones. I mean, no disrespect to the other ones at all, but I guess also the time that we both grew up in. We had the video games later on, like Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat took a shitload of notes of Enter the Dragon. I think basically it is a computer version of Enter the Dragon. You have the main protagonist who also loses a sibling. Uh,
No,
they
you're
go
right.
on a boat to an island.
Yeah, yeah. It's the thing about it is I was thinking about that today. It's funny you brought that up because really there's a couple characters I can think of like from the top of my head, and you might even know some more. Liu Kang is obviously based on Bruce Lee. I mean, he is Bruce Lee pretty much. Like the archetype of Bruce Lee is Liu Kang. In Tekken, the Law characters like Forrest Law and Martial Law are based on Bruce Lee. And Dead or Alive, that video game franchise, Jan Lee is based on Bruce Lee. And even the Soul Calibur game came to mind. Maxie, that character with the nunchucks, yeah, the nunchucks, he's based on Bruce Lee. I mean, and there's probably more that I'm not thinking of right now, but those are just a few that I can think of off the top of my head. But like you said, this movie influenced all those games, Street Fighter in particular, Mortal Kombat in particular, Soul Calibur in particular, and Tekken. It's all about, I mean, Tekken, the whole, like, the tagline for the video game is the King of Iron Fist Tournament. I mean, it's like, it's exactly from pretty much Enter the Dragon when they go to Han's Island. It's like the exact same setup. And like you were saying, I got into this when I was young, around your age, probably the same time. And for me, it was because I was really, really interested in martial arts. I was reading comic books. I was reading the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I got infatuated with, like I told you before, Japan, China. But it wasn't until I really watched Enter the Dragon where I was kind of like, whoa, man, this is like crazy, man. This is, and I told you this before, from that point forward, I kind of strive to be like Bruce Lee. Like he's to this day, he's still like a hero to me, if not like one of my most influential like people that I follow because, wow, like I know we're going to talk about the movie here soon, but there's so much I need to say about Bruce eventually. We can talk about it later, but so much about the movie and the martial arts and the structure and the choreography and who he is as a person and his philosophy, like it means so much to me because I believe like a lot of it. So we can talk about that.
Funny that you said comic books because the script is loosely based on a comic book, Terry and the Pirates, from I think the 1930s.
Yeah, I
There's
did read.
also a small reference in the movie itself where Mr. Williams is like, "Oh, you're like you come straight out of a comic book or something like that." He
Yes, he
says that to
does.
Han.
He calls Han the yeah. He's like, you're the typical comic book character. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I love that movie. I love the movie so much. And let's kind of talk about like the movie in a nutshell here for a second. Like Son and I are just are explaining here. It's basically about a tournament, and how it starts off is it starts off in a Shaolin temple with Bruce, and he's talking to his master, and this like British team of special agents come and kind of recruit him to go to this island where this evil guy Han is, because they have an assumption that he's like a drug trafficker and he's trafficking like women and all this kind of stuff, and there's a prostitution thing going on there. So they're trying to like they have an idea that he's like a crime lord, but they want Bruce Lee's character, whose name is Lee in the movie, to um, basically go see what it's about. He's not allowed to use any lethal force, like no guns or anything, because guns are outlawed on the island, and in that like part of the country, they're like you can get in serious like trouble if you have a firearm. So no guns. It's all martial arts. It's all that kind of stuff. And what happens is these other two people, Williams is like he has his own karate studio, and he's basically going there to just escape his shitty life because around this time in the 70s, obviously, there's undercurrent racism, like African Americans, blacks weren't like appreciated.
Speak about
And
diversity.
oh, exactly. And that's another thing. The cast for this is so diverse. And
Mm.
Williams' character, like there's actually a scene in the movie where the cops come up to him and they like basically try to arrest him for no reason whatsoever just because he's black. And they grab like a bag he has, and inside the bag he has like an airplane ticket, and it says he's going to Hong Kong for the tournament, and he's leaving out of Hawaii, and they're like, "You're not going anywhere. You're not going to Hawaii." And then like they try to beat him up and take his stuff, and he's a martial artist, so he disarms them, takes the cop car, and like drives away. It's great. It's a great fucking scene. And then Roper, the third guy, who's like one of the main characters in the movie, he has like a gambling debt, and like he basically goes to the tournament because he needs the money to pay back like people he owes money to. So if he wins, like he figures like, okay, maybe I'll be able to settle some debts here. So
Or
they're
to
all there for
escape.
or to escape the people pursuing him and chasing him. So they're all there for different reasons. Like Bruce Lee's character is there because he's trying to figure out stuff about Han to report back to British intelligence. Um, Roper's character is there because he's trying to escape these people and settle some debts. And then the Williams character, played by Jim Kelly, is there because he just wants to experience fighting. Like he really loves to fight, and he wants to get away and make a name for himself so he doesn't have to put up with all the racism and all that kind of shit back in the United States. So it's kind of a really cool concept of how they set it up. And the thing I loved about it too is at the beginning of the movie when they're introducing the characters, there's a plane that comes over, so that's air, that's an element, and Jim's character gets off of that. That's Williams, and then it shows Roper going through the city streets in a carriage. That's earth, and then it shows Bruce Lee in a boat, and that's water. And then obviously the air is all over the place because it shows shots of the clouds and the wind and all that kind of stuff. So all the
Mm.
elements are present in it. Chinese culture, Chinese philosophy, all that kind of cool stuff is in it. So yeah, I mean that's just an observation from me. What do you think happens after that, Sana? After they all get introduced, what particular scenes like stuck out to you after or before they go to the island, or like building up to that point, like the very beginning of the movie? Was there anything that really stuck out to you? I think you kind of mentioned something earlier. What like stuck out where you were like, "That's awesome," you know?
Well, that later, but one of the things it starts with, which I didn't know when I was a kid, but I knew when I was a teenager, which made it so much more awesome for me, was the first thing that when he starts, how do you call it, like sparring against Sammo Hung, the one guy that would later go with Jackie Chan to make incredible Hong Kong movies, and Jackie Chan is even in it. But to see Sammo Hung in the beginning, it's more exciting to see it. And I mean, if I think about Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan and all their movies, I mean, they really sucked me in the whole Hong Kong cinema.
Oh yeah,
And still to this day, they're just so amazing.
absolutely.
And the scene that you were referring to is, and I have to look it up. And by the way, a little fun fact: did you know what the movie was supposed to be called first?
Yeah, wasn't it called like Blood and Iron or something like that?
Yeah,
Blood and Iron.
Blood and Steel, I believe.
That's it. Blood and Steel. That's what. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I do know that. Yeah, I did read about that
It's like,
before.
what? It doesn't make much sense. I mean, it
Actually,
makes more sense that Enter the Dragon.
here's
I mean,
another
I
fun.
understand the reference. Okay.
Yeah, here's another fun fact. Before you go into that scene, did you know when they hired John Saxon, the guy who plays Roper? Initially, he was the character who was supposed to be killed instead of Jim Kelly's character, and he said he wouldn't do it unless Jim Kelly's character Williams got killed. So they changed the script just so they could get John Saxon. Because at that time, you know another thing about this movie that's really great? Like
Mm.
Jim Kelly was an actual like worldwide like United States champion of karate. Like he really was in real life. And the same thing with John Saxon, that actor. He actually studied Shotokan karate, which is actually what the art I was in was. It was an ancestor art of Tang Soo Do, the art that I practice. So he was a judo and Shotokan karate champion. John Saxon was. Um, Also, like I said, Jim Kelly was a United States Taekwondo champion. And then obviously the great Bruce Lee was a Wing Chun Jeet Kune Do founder. I mean, like the cast in this, it was fucking unbelievable. Like when they're actually doing those scenes and stuff, Bruce Lee choreographed that shit. Like he actually choreographed the entire fucking movie.
Yeah.
Like such a genius. And I'm sorry to like go off on a tangent here, but I'm like really
No.
oozing with passion for this. So what were you gonna say? I'm sorry. Go ahead. You say what you're gonna say.
Well, I also wanted to add to that I really think it's nice that, with example with John Saxon, that Bruce Lee saw either a videotape of him or he actually saw him doing a fight with someone that really was like triggered him to like, oh, I want this guy in my movie. Which was also another fun fact when he was fighting Jackie Chan, when he hit him actually in the face in the end. He was telling Jackie Chan he was very sorry and he would be in his future movies, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But back to the scene. Where is it? I wrote it somewhere. I'm very sorry.
No, that's all right. Take your time.
Yeah, so when you get to when he's talking to that old Chinese man in the beginning.
Yeah, the Shaolin headmaster guy, like the main
Yeah.
teacher. Yeah, yeah.
He tells Mr. Lee about what happened to his sister because I think he didn't really want to tell him to spare his, feelings and emotions. When I was a kid, and I've seen this movie so many times, but to me, her name is in the movie Sun Lee, and in real life, her name is Angela Mao. It was such a small scene, like which takes only maybe 3 minutes in total. I was just so mesmerized because that was like the first time that I was seeing a woman actually fighting, and she was so badass and she was beautiful too. And it's like, wow, women can be fighting too, because usually you're very used to seeing a man, that Bruce Lee can take on an entire army. But here you get all these men chasing her, and you see her really get wounded, and that really kind of like, put me on the edge of the seat, like, whoa, is this even possible? And you see O'Hara's character going after her. You're like, oh, that's such an evil looking man. And then at one point where she gets surrounded by all these guys and she tries to escape, and then O'Hara walks in, that scene like really put me on the edge of the seat, like, no, you're not going to do that. But she really, I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. It was all about honor. Better to do it myself instead of fighting a guy that I can never beat and get in so much pain. So that was such a scene, and I was like, whoa. And then later on, you see Bruce Lee at the grave of the sister and the mother, and he has a small dialogue there. But as I told you, there were two sentences that really stood out. It has a whole different meaning now, and I have it written down. And he says, like, I must leave. Please try and find a way to forgive me. And that actually gave me, goosebumps. Like, whoa. The fact that he wanted to make this type of movie for so long in America, but he never got the chance. And now he had the opportunity. And knowing what happened afterwards, he never saw the completion of the movie. And then that sentence is like, ooh,
Yeah.
shoot differently.
No, really, really powerful stuff. I agree with everything you said 100%. I mean, that's part of it. And I think I told you earlier there was something I kind of wanted to add to that a little bit
Yeah.
too. But it relates to it because the scene we're talking about in the movie, guys, if you've never seen Enter the Dragon, by the way, watch Enter the Dragon because it's fucking amazing.
Uh,
What Sana said, this old master, Bruce Lee had a sister. He never really knew what happened to her. But this old master guy, what happens is, we said earlier in the stream, this guy Han basically went around Hong Kong and stuff like that and abducted women, and he basically drugged them up with heroin and used them for prostitutes. So what they were trying to do is, this guy O'Hara that Sana's talking about was like Han's bodyguard, and he and a bunch of Han's other goons went to this village where Bruce Lee's sister was to confront this old master guy to get her, and she refuses and starts fighting all of them, like Sana said. She goes into this warehouse, barricades herself in there, and they obviously, there's like, I don't know, 25, 30 of them. She beats the shit literally out of like 10 of them, 12 of them. But then after she barricades herself in the warehouse, she tries to escape out a window, but like 3 or 4 of them jump through the window. And then there's another window, and she tries to jump out that window. And fucking O'Hara, the bodyguard guy, he's like this big, burly, muscular, bearded dude with this. He has a cut on his face because right before she started to run from these guys when they came to the village, her master told her to run, and she starts running, and he pulled out a knife and cut O'Hara's face. So he has this like cut. So when he approaches her, he looks fucking menacing as hell because he has this huge cut on his face, and he comes into the warehouse, and she ends up, she doesn't want to be trafficked. And like Sana said, she doesn't want to fight this guy because he's fucking huge, and she knows that he's not going to fight fair either. Like, he'll get like 4 or 5 goons that he has around to probably help him like beat her up or something and take advantage of her. So she picks up a piece of the broken glass that the guys came through and basically harakiris or seppukus herself or whatever, like Sana said, the honorable way to do it. But the scene that I really wanted to add to was when you talked about him visiting the gravestone. This means so much to me too, because oh my goodness, I love Bruce Lee. Like I said, he's a hero, lifelong hero for me. And another thing that I got from that scene when he goes to the grave and says, like, hey, look, please forgive me for what I'm about to do. I know this. Like Sana said, he always wanted to make a movie in America. He was actually born in America. He was actually born in San Francisco, Chinatown. Bruce Lee was. And he went back to Hong Kong to live because that's where his family was from. So he kind of went back and forth between San Francisco and Hong Kong for a really big part of his life, like his early years, his teens and stuff like that. And another thing I got from that scene was when he says, forgive me for what I'm about to do. If you guys don't really know anything about Bruce Lee and his backstory, like, he was always kind of really rebellious as a youth. He never really wanted to follow stuff that had structure or had like a code or anything. He was always thinking outside of the box and trying to innovate and create things that were different. And if you guys know anything about Chinese culture, you can't really do that over there. It's like, this is the structure. This is what you have to do. And they are super strict with it. And if you are disobedient and you don't listen to what they say, they will literally like lash you with a paddle or beat you. Like, and he didn't like that. So
yeah.
I think part of that scene too was when he says that, he's like, listen, forgive me for what I'm about to do, because, and it goes to his whole philosophy of martial arts too. Like, Jeet Kune Do, that whole style is based on not having a style. Like, that's what he always says. And he says it in this movie. He's like, the guy asked him, he's like, what's your fighting style? He's like, my fighting style is not fighting. It's like, what does that even mean? But like,
Yeah.
as a martial artist, I understand it because it makes a fuckload of sense. And watching the way Roper fights and watching the way Williams fights and watching the way Lee fights, I can totally see the differences in their styles. Like, maybe a regular person who doesn't know anything about martial arts is watching it and they're like, oh yeah, that's a kick or whatever. I practiced martial arts for almost 16 years of my life. I taught it. I know what the guys are doing. Like, I can see the subtle differences. And if you watch Bruce and what he does, Jeet Kune Do is it really isn't a style, but there are principles within it that are so superb. Like, they're excellent. They are just masterful martial arts principles. 5 things real quick, and then we'll continue with the movie. 5 things here about Jeet Kune Do, okay? Because this is really an honor to Bruce Lee too, and in martial arts in general. Jeet Kune Do means the way of the intercepting fist. Okay, that's what it means, and what that is you basically, and he says this in the movie, you need to know when to expand and you need to know when to contract. So basically, when you're in a fight, a lot of the times you wait for the opponent to make the first move and attack, and then they become vulnerable. Jeet Kune Do style doesn't involve any blocking whatsoever. Jeet Kune Do involves interception. So when somebody attacks you physically, throws a punch, if you watch Bruce Lee in this movie, you can totally fucking see it. If you listen to the stream and you go watch the movie afterwards, you'll see what I'm talking about. When people attack Bruce in the movie, he never, ever, ever blocks. I don't care what you watch it, he does not block anything. Technique in Jeet Kune Do, it's actually a technique from fencing and a technique from boxing. And it's called stop action. So what happens is when somebody throws a punch at you, instead of blocking and then following up with an attack, it's one motion. The economy of motion is to block and be offensive and defensive at the same time, but it's not really a block, it's more of an attack. If you ever see him do that, somebody will throw something at him. Like, there's a scene in there where he fights O'Hara, and they're in fighting stance with their hands like this.
Yeah.
And before he can even fucking throw a punch, Lee just fucking decks him in the face. And that technique that he uses there is part of the stop action, but it's called a non-telegraphed attack. He never telegraphs any motion in his eyes or his body to indicate that he's ready to strike. He just looks at the guy deadly in the eyes and just knows when to do it. That's a fundamental component of Jeet Kune Do. Another component is called the parrying punch. Somebody throws a punch at Bruce, and you see this in the fucking movie. Like, I'm just saying shit because I know where it's at. I've seen this movie over 100 times. It's amazing. When somebody throws an attack at Bruce Lee, the parrying punch is he parries their attack off of his body, and then he follows up with, usually it's an open-handed palm strike. If you ever see the movie, somebody, even in this movie, they'll attack him, and he goes like this really quickly, and he'll parry the guy's attack off of his body, and then hit him in the neck real quick, and the guy fucking falls over. That's like a fundamental component of this style. 2 more things: the footwork. If you ever see him like jumping around with his feet, shaking his feet and stuff around and doing that kind of stuff, that's actually based on a jump rope technique, which I used to do because I wanted to be just like Bruce Lee. He would use the jump rope technique to get his balance and his movement up and down consecutive, but he also took fundamental components of fencing, that art. If you ever see guys who fence, they have to expand and contract and keep the distance apart from each other with the foil that they use to try to get points and stab each other. His foot movement is based on that, but also it's based on boxing, like Muhammad Ali. If you ever watch Muhammad Ali and his footwork, Bruce Lee took that from that too. And the last thing about Jeet Kune Do that you need to understand is, and I love this philosophy from Bruce, and you've probably heard this a million times, be like water, my friends, right? And what he means by that is,
cheers to that.
yeah, cheers. And that's a good point. Bruce said this, and I have a few books on Bruce and his quotes and his wisdom and all that kind of stuff. The reason he said be like water was because when he was talking about Jeet Kune Do, water is technically formless. It's always flowing, okay? If you put water in a cup, water becomes the cup. If you put water in a bottle like this, water becomes the bottle. Water flows like a river. It can go really, really slow and really tranquil and flow, or it can go really, really fast and really powerful, or like waves in the ocean. They can crash, and then they can recede. They can crash, and they can recede. And that's his whole philosophy with Jeet Kune Do. Be like water. You need to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Adaptable. The word I'm looking for is adaptable, like water. Water is ever changing. It's fluid. It's never the same thing ever. It's always changing. And that's what he meant by his fighting style and his art. It's always changing, because in a real life situation, I was a martial arts practitioner. And the reason why I chose to try to be like Bruce Lee was because I believe he was right. Sometimes if you're in a real life situation, the techniques that they show you in martial arts, yes, they can come in handy. But what Bruce believed was you're never going to know what's going to happen. If somebody throws a punch and there's not going to be a list of 10 things that you're going to know what to do. You're going to have to react in a way where you need to understand when to expand and contract and be like water. Because that's the real fight. Bruce Lee pretty much put street fighting and martial arts together with a ton of other things to make the most well-rounded art, in my opinion. I mean, Jeet Kune Do is my favorite martial art. I think it's the greatest art there is. I mean, and I practice Tung Do, which is super traditional, but Lee was really against the traditional stuff. And you can see that in the movie. Like, they tell him to dress up to come to, like, roll call, and he comes out in, like, a Kung Fu shirt because he's like, listen, I don't have an art. I'm going to wear my Kung Fu shirt because that's who I am. Has nothing to do with a dobok or a gi or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to wear the Kung Fu shirt. Another thing he introduced, Roper actually does this at the end when he's fighting the big dude. He bites him in the leg. Bruce Lee believed in biting, poking people in the eyes, kicking people in the shins and body parts that are, like, vulnerable. Your legs create your movement. If you kick somebody in the shin, the leg, the ankle, the torso, you're going to upset their equilibrium. And if you watch the movie, very seldom does he kick people in the face, or very seldom does he kick people in the head. It's usually his fists to the head. His kicks are very low because he's trying to disrupt your flow, your movement, your legs, because really the power and stuff comes from your torso and your hips when you're throwing punches or kicks. That's why he focuses on those kind of things. So make sure when you guys watch the movie, I could go on for days about this. Like I said, I got 16 years worth of martial arts practitioner in here, right? I make sure you guys are watching the movie and you're picking up on those little cues and you can see the different styles. If you watch the scene where Jim Kelly keeps doing the kick against Han, he's doing like this inverted kind of like roundhouse kick, and it's not working. He can't, because Han keeps like blocking it, because Han is using like a wushu or Wing Chun technique, which is very, very closely related to Jeet Kune Do, but it's Wing Chun. And Jim Kelly can't do shit. Like, Han is just like intercepting his movement. So watch it and you'll pick up on it. You know what I'm talking about. Sorry for going off on tangents on it. You were like, oh my God, shut up already.
No, I mean, it's so interesting because, for example, in the beginning, when he's talking to the older guy, I mean, he is talking in such a philosophical way that probably a martial artist understands, but to me, it's like...
No, that's a good point. Even the little kid with the finger, when he's like, don't focus on the finger because you missed the whole movement. Your finger's supposed to point to the moon. He's like, if you focus on this, you're missing the universe up here, which is actually the main part. And then he slaps him on the head when he bows to him and closes his eyes. He's like, always keep your eyes on your opponent even when you're bowing. And the kid's like, he bows to him like this with his eyes open, you know?
Yeah, but also with the kicks, when he goes like show emotion or something, I'm like, I'm trying to envision myself in the kid's shoes. I'm like, I will be confused too. Like,
well, here, think about it this way. I'll explain it from a martial arts perspective.
Do it.
Okay. The one line that I really love in that, and I actually used to tell my kids this and my students, there's a line that my instructor used to say to us. My instructor was Grandmaster Jae Chul Shin. He was a South Korean, and he spoke broken English, but we could understand him. He actually came to the United States and founded this art, Tung Do, which I practiced, and had a studio in Burlington, North Carolina. That was the headquarters, and he lived there until he passed away. He passed away in 2012. But he always told us when we were training at black belt camp or we had tournaments, the one saying he always said was, practice does not make perfect. He always said, perfect practice makes perfect. So in other words, even when you're practicing, because a lot of times people will half-ass shit in practice and will put their heart and soul into it when it really matters. Like if you're in a tournament or you're in a class, he always said, put your heart and soul, in other words, perfect practice makes perfect, into everything, even your practice. Your practice is what's going to make you the best version of yourself. And Bruce Lee says that to the kid, and he also says it when he's talking to his teacher. And you know, it's funny, son, I don't know if you picked up on this. The teacher says, What is the 13th commandment? 13 of the Shaolin. Do you remember that part? 13 is our number. Sanne and I's number is 13. And
Oh.
that was a part that stuck out to me. And Bruce Lee answers a bunch of questions and he says, who is your opponent? What is your opponent? And Bruce Lee says, my opponent is nothing because I does not exist. And as a kid, you're thinking like, what does that even mean? But here's what it
Well,
means.
still to this day.
Well, here's what it means. Here's what it means. As a martial arts practitioner myself, I fought many fights with a lot of different people. People who were physically bigger than me, people who were smaller than me, people who were faster than me, and more nimbler than me. The whole point of that saying is when you fight someone, we had in my art, we had two different kinds of sparring. There was one step sparring, which is like if somebody grabbed you, you needed to react this way. If somebody punched you, you needed to react this way. If somebody kicks you, you need to react this way. But then we had free sparring, which is more like the Jeet Kune Do thing, where it's situational. Depending on the situation, anything could happen. People will come at you with kicks, knees, weapons. You had to defend yourself with what was up here and what was in here. And that's what Bruce means. You really have to believe that you can beat the opponent because the opponent technically doesn't exist. The opponent is yourself. And when you remove yourself from the equation and the opponent from the equation, the only thing that's left is the spiritual entity, the key. You become one with the key. And here's what I want to tie it to. Dragon Ball Z. And I'll say this. Dragon Ball Z is influenced by Enter the Dragon. Akira Toriyama calls it Dragon Ball Z because he took so much influence from Enter the Dragon. When Goku powers up and he becomes Super Saiyan in that series, when he starts to power up and all that energy is around him and his eyes go white, Akira Toriyama took that directly from Bruce Lee's gaze, like in the scene where he's fighting Ohara. He just gives him like this dead stare, doesn't even flinch, doesn't move, doesn't blink. That is him focusing all of his energy to basically become ki, become water. So when he says there is no I, there is no opponent, what he means is there is only Jeet Kune Do. There is only my action. That's all that exists in that moment because it's a situational thing. And he says to the student, don't attack me with anger. He's like, and the kid's like, well, I need to think. And he's like, no. You don't think. He's like, you feel. And that's the whole point of it. Martial arts is an art. It's first and foremost, it's an art. It's an expression. It's a feeling above anything else. And in order to transcend yourself and become ki, you have to feel it. You have to believe it. You don't need to think about it. You just need to do it. And that's what Bruce Lee means by that. Like, remove yourself and your opponent from the situation and just think of it as energy and just think of it as motion and just think of it as water and just think of it as the technique itself. You actually become the technique. That's what he means. So you don't exist anymore. You become those 5 principles I just talked about of Jeet Kune Do. That's what you are. So that's what it's about. That's what he meant by that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, as I said, a lot of things when I watch it, it goes over my head, as I said, but a martial artist would probably understand it. So this is pretty cool. And I think a lot of people will agree when they either are watching now or will watch it. You know, you give valuable information. And when you said that Bruce Lee was rebellious and that's not really a thing, I know that there's a saying in Japan, and I'm pretty sure there's a similar one in China. You have to envision a board with all nails. And if one nail sticks out, it has to be hammered in to be all become equal. So you cannot really stick out. You all have to be one.
Exactly. That's a good explanation because he definitely stuck out. I mean, he definitely did. Yeah. He did that's a good point though. He didn't want to be like everybody else. And I think that really influences his art because he was like, I don't want to just stick to structure and tradition and be another nail on the board who's in with everybody. I want to rise above, like be the nail that's sticking out. I want to be the one who does something. I want to be a creator. I want to be an innovator. I want to show people my passions, what I'm interested in, that kind of stuff. So I think you're right with that. That makes it that's a really good visual interpretation of it. You know, you said it better than I did, more eloquently with the nail analogy.
Yeah, I mean, I was taught that in Japanese class. So
That makes
also
sense.
that ki is energy in Japan, and they when you ask someone in Japanese how are you, you say genki, like good energy. So do you
Hmm.
have good energy? You don't literally ask how are you. No, do you have good energy? But when you talked about sizes, whatever, when you're fighting, I think they have a really nice reference to that when they're on the boat when the insects are fighting each other, and Roper is betting for the big guy, and Bruce Lee is like, oh, the smaller one. Never underestimate the little guy.
Well, yeah, you're right to a point. And here's what I think, though. I think Bruce initially thought that when he was younger, because if you look at him, compared to the other guys, like he is kind of smaller in stature, like short wise,
Mm.
structure wise, and even compared to Bully Young, the big dude, like he's jacked. Bruce is like really small, but I mean he's obviously shredded. Like he doesn't have an ounce of fat on his body. But um, the thing with Bruce was, I think once he started to, like we talked about Jeet Kune Do, he just believed that. And we were taught this in martial arts, my classes. Like I said, I fought people who were a lot bigger than me. Really, honestly, a lot stronger than me. I can remember getting to the point where I was practicing. I told you this before. Every day. I mean, I practiced for hours and hours a day because I wanted to be the best martial artist I could possibly be. Because I wanted to be Bruce Lee. I mean, like I really did. And I remember fighting someone. I told you, I mentioned this in your stream yesterday, where I broke somebody's nose one time. I was practicing pretty much Jeet Kune Do because I had an instruction manual on it, and I was reading through techniques, and there's visual cues in there of how to do certain things and how to intercept techniques. And when we free sparred, I would just do Jeet Kune Do. I completely forgot about like Tang Soo Do, the art, and I was like, Bruce Lee knows what he's doing. So this one guy, I was the instructor in the class, and he was fighting somebody who was a young teenager. He was probably like 15 or 16 years old, and this guy was like 30. And he's literally like hammering this kid. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't do that. You don't do that shit in my class. If you want to do that somewhere else and be a tough guy and beat up on kids, you can get the hell out of here. So I didn't say that, but I thought it. And then when he was done fighting the kid, he actually hit the kid, and the kid like started crying because he like blasted this kid like in the head. And I was like, okay. And I remember the kid's name. The kid's name was Corey. I was like, Corey, sit down. I was like, Jesse, me and you are gonna fight right now. And then we started fighting, and every attack he threw, it was literally a 30-second fight. He was, like Bruce says in the movie Enter the Dragon, he was coming at me full aggression, anger, 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 just throwing punches and punches and punches. And I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you like they weren't strong. I absorbed them, I shook them off, and I took the energy and blocked it. And when you get hit, if you get hit by a punch, you have to suck it in real quick and blow it out so you don't fucking pass out or it doesn't knock the wind out of you. So, I mean, he hit me like once or twice. I shook most of the stuff off. And then as soon as he went, because what that does is if you keep raising somebody, you're going to get fucking tired. I let him do his thing. He gets tired, and I can see his motion start to slow down ever so slightly. So when he went to throw his last punch, I did Way the Intercepting Fist, Jeet Kune Do. I grabbed his arm, and I threw him on the ground, and I came down as he was laying on the ground on his back with an axe kick. It's when you take your leg up like this, and then you bring it down really hard like a fucking axe. Right on his fucking nose. Shattered his entire fucking nose. Just shattered it. Blood was fucking gushing everywhere. He's like, oh, oh. Needless to say, he never came back to the class. But the thing about it was,
Okay.
listen to this. We actually had to sign waivers for this class because if you get injured in something, it wasn't our responsibility as instructors or practitioners. It was, you knew coming into this class, there's a potential for injury. I actually had several injuries myself. I hyperextended my shin one time when I was fighting and fucked that all up. I dislocated my knee one time. Like we did some crazy, crazy, crazy shit. But you know what? I wouldn't trade any of the shit for the world. I absolutely love it so much. I mean, Bruce Lee, like I said, I'm going off on tangents here. I'm sorry, but
No, I mean, as I
big
said,
part of my
also
life.
today, he inspired that generation and generations to come. I
Absolutely.
mean, because Enter the Dragon has so much diversity in there. You know, you see a Chinese man, you naturally assume martial arts is just for Asian people. Yet you see a person like Williams, who is a quote unquote black guy, you're like, oh, they can do it too. And you see a white guy, you're like, oh, we can do it too. So I think he he's a fucking genius. I mean, he was just basically what he was doing in his classes already in San Francisco. He was showing it to the world. Martial arts is for everybody. There is no exception.
Absolutely.
Because this is just an appearance.
Absolutely. I mean, I trained myself. I trained people from so many different ethnic backgrounds. I mean, I trained kids from ages 5 all the way up to adulthood, like people who were older than me in their 40s and 50s. I was training. It's and all from all different backgrounds. Black, white, Asian, Indian, whatever. I can
Hmm.
still remember some of the kids I had, and they were exceptional students. Some of the students I taught were absolutely exceptional. I had this one kid, actually, his parents were from Saudi Arabia, and they moved over here. And I'll tell you what, at first they were really, really like scared to put him in this class because they were like, what's it going to be like? Because we have a very strict religious and like ethnic code. We don't know what to do. And I remember his dad coming up to me and being like, technically, he's not allowed to wear this color or whatever, because it was like I don't know what it was about. I didn't ask questions. I was just like, listen, in my class, the diversity's here. Everything falls away. I'm not saying that I don't respect your beliefs or your thing. I was like, but in here, he can wear whatever he needs to wear. I don't want to upset your balance. And when it's something like he couldn't wear, because when we would go to tournaments, we had to wear all black gis, all black dobaks to be like flashy, to look different. And one of his things was he can't wear that color. Like he can't wear all black. He has to wear white. And I was like, well, fine, let him wear the traditional white gi. So what we ended up doing was make him the centerpiece of the whole thing. And the kid loved it. He was like, oh yeah. We made him like run up these pads and do the final break at the end. And it was great. I mean, karate was amazing for me. It was such a hell of an experience. I mean, it was an amazing thing for me. And I owe that to Bruce Lee and to my instructors, because
Yeah.
my instructors really, really, really took to heart the stuff that Bruce Lee set in motion in the 70s. They really believed in mixed martial arts. They really believed in taking ideas from other practices and other arts to fuse it into something. And Bruce Lee said this himself: everyone's unique and everybody's different. Jeet Kune Do is not an art because it's what you feel like you need to do when you're in a fighting situation or when you're in life. Because much like life, fighting is always changing and it's never the same. You never know where you're going to be or where you're going to be at in a fight, and you never know where you're going to be or where you're going to be at in life. He said that. So I'm so thankful. Like, it's bringing back so many memories. Like, I'm sitting here like envisioning myself right now in front of my students, like giving a lecture. Like, I I really am. It's incredible. Like this movie, watching it again, it brought back so many memories for me as a martial arts instructor. I loved it so much. Still my favorite to this day. I mean, without question. Without question.
Oh, yeah. As I said yesterday, we should definitely make like a 5 or top 10 with, if you never have seen a martial arts movies, these are the movies that you have to check first, because that's a must.
Absolutely.
And I think number one,
I know Dragon definitely
because
number one.
that one opens so many doors.
But it's like you said, Sana. The reason it opens so many doors is because it's so diverse. The cast themselves, we just mentioned it. It lets you realize that this isn't just for Asian people. Martial arts isn't just an Asian thing. Yes, they
Hmm.
created a lot of it. Like, they created pretty much, I mean, they pretty much discovered and founded like 99.9% of the martial arts that are out there. But like you just said, when you see African Americans practicing it, or Asian people, or Caucasian, or Indian, or you know other ethnic groups of people, if you see Europeans practicing it, Americans, North and South, people from Asia, people from Russia, people from wherever, Saudi Arabia, like I said, the kid in my class, you understand that it's a really unifying thing. Like and that's what I said when that kid asked me that question. Everything fades away. Like, we're all one here. We're a team. This is a group. This is a karate. In Korean, we call it a dojang. This is a karate dojang. This is where we have respect and love. It's almost like a camaraderie, sort of. It doesn't matter where you come from. You're still part of the World Tang Soo Do Association. You're still part of Jeet Kune Do. You're still part of whatever, you know?
Mm.
So, yeah. But I'm going to go to the chat here real quick. And I'm sorry, guys. I just got lost in my nostalgia here. Jim Kelly's legendary. Was mad as a kid when he got killed. Absolutely, man. Me too. I remember watching that scene where that happened, and I was like, "Wow, he was so incredible. How did he lose to that?" You know, the way he went out, it was depressing. I was hoping he would live. You know. What's up, VV? How are you? And then Sean said, "I'm just sitting here and enjoying this. Bruce was so influential to martial arts. Oh, absolutely, brother. Absolutely. I mean, the greatest in my opinion. Probably Sauna's too. I don't know, but for me, the absolute greatest. Jim Kelly was a beauty. Yes, he was.
He was.
Legendary. Trini slang for martial arts was universal. Nice. No worries, bro. Thanks for coming in anyway. Keys, Dave, Varangian. Thanks for coming over the stream, guys. Appreciate you.
But Sean is right. I mean, I have a desire to do martial arts in the future, but I don't know the way of thinking. And yet, here are you who have this entire past in martial arts. So you look at it differently. And I think that's very interesting when you, I mean, you have people like me who are a fan of martial art movies. And we're like, oh, nice kick, you know, but we don't see the difference. We don't see everything, blah, 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 blah. And then here comes you who is like, yeah, but this and this and this. I think that's really interesting. So,
let me
arigato.
Yeah, no problem. Let me hit you with one thing here. It's on my shirt, and I encourage you to listen to what Bruce has to say. I'm wearing a shirt right here. This is a quote. It says, "Fear is," and I don't know if you can see the bottom. It says, "for others," right? And that's Bruce right there, baby. In other words, what he's saying is, yeah. In other words, is don't be afraid, Sana. Like, here's the thing: you don't need to know everything about what it's going to be or what kind of kick it is right away. The only way, and this is what Bruce is saying, the only way to really understand it is to do it. Like I said, Jeet Kune Do. Isn't it funny how the word do means way, and that's Chinese and that's Korean and that's Jeet Kune Do means way, do. Jeet Kune of the intercepting fist. My art was Tang Soo Do, the way of the Tang fist, the Tang dynasty, the Chinese Tang dynasty. That's what they practiced. Do. It's spelled the same way, right? Isn't that weird? What that means is just do it. It's like Nike. Just do it. You don't need to know everything to understand it. You will understand it in time. You said this to me before yourself. You will understand things later. Just go do it, enjoy it, and the only way that you're really going to understand and learn about it is to experience it through your actions. And that's how Jeet Kune Do and all martial arts relate to life, because I'm a firm believer in that. That's an actual belief of mine, not even in martial arts, but in general, in life. The only way you're actually ever going to be good at something is to do it. If you let fear hold you back, you're never going to go do it. You have to just go do it. Don't give a shit if you're shitty at first. You will get better. Perfect practice makes perfect. I said that earlier, right? When you practice, make sure you're practicing with your heart and soul, and it will take you in the right direction. That's all you need to know. Right?
Joe is dropping that thick knowledge bomb. Yeah, I mean, next time I watch Enter the Dragon, I will look at it differently. Like, I will look at the footwork and then think, this is what he was saying. I mean, I watch it, but now I will look more to the details. So,
absolutely.
Sensei.
Let me show you guys something real quick here. I want to show you a couple trinkets I have. Then we'll talk more about the movie. I'm sorry, but I got to do this because I'm just excited. So excited. This right here is my black belt. Right here. I've had this thing for, wow. I think I tested for my first degree in 1999. So I've had this belt for over 20 years, and Nowadays, they actually print the stripes on, but back in the day when you tested for your black belt, you had to get these pieces of tape stripes that they put on here. And I have 2 because I'm a second degree. And let me show you guys just a little bit here of stuff about me, which is, I'm being egotistical here, but that's little of me. It's my black belt membership card. It's my black belt number right there in the World Tang Soo Do Association.
Yeah, fun fact that 13 comes back in that.
It does. We talked about that. This right here is my first degree black belt certificate right here in the World Tang Soo Do Association. As you can see, I was a very, very young man. In 1999, when I tested, I was only, let me see here, 13 years old. So I got my black belt when I was 13 years old.
Again, 13. Hello.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And I got my second degree black belt 2 years later when I was 15 years old. And that's my second degree certificate right there.
Oh, I love all the Korean text. Now I want to read Hangul.
Yeah, I mean, we practiced very, very hard, and I'm very, very fortunate for it. You know, at first I can remember being a kid and I hated it because I was like, I got to read this entire black belt manual, this Tang Soo Do manual. This is my master right here on the cover, Grandmaster Jae-Chul Shin. He wrote a book on Hyungs. We had to read this and memorize it. But I was telling Sanne, if it wasn't for that in martial arts, I probably never would have become a historian because I had to memorize techniques and materials. And when I went to college to study it, it was easy for me because I had been doing it for so long, for so many years. To get this black belt, to attain this, to attain so much other stuff. I mean, I showed Sanne this before the stream. I'm just going to geek out here for a second.
I think actually there must be a series where you just go through the chapters and you show us how to do it.
This right here is a bow staff. This is my favorite weapon of all time. I train with this bow staff. I placed in forms several times gold in the United States, the World Tang Soo Do Association, gold with bow staff. It was my absolutely favorite weapon to this day. A lot of people like swords. A lot of people like nunchaka. A lot of people like daggers. We call this in Korean, it's called a byong. And we used to use these to fight each other, to spar, and to practice forms. This is my practice katana. This is called a sangum. It's Korean for katana or sword. And then the dagger I don't have with me now, but that's called a dangum. Smaller blade is what it means. Sangum is longer, dangum smaller. And then you guys watch some of my other videos. I had these bad boys doing some chucking.
Yeah.
Some nunchuckers. And I still have all the stuff. I mean, these are the actual items I used when I was an instructor, when I was a teacher. I kept every single thing. I have a bag full of sparring gear somewhere. I have my old uniform on somewhere. Yeah.
Sounds cool.
You know what? I'm going to be straight up with them. You know what? Yes.
Pepperoni pizza.
Pepperoni pizza. Donnie is my favorite turtle. He absolutely is because of the bow staff. And you know what I love about Donnie too is he's the smart one. He's the one who's always thinking and coming up with the cool shit, right? Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Thanks, Louie. Appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in, man. Always a pleasure to have you on here, brother. Thank you so much. Nice. I appreciate all you guys in the chat. Thanks again for coming in here and supporting all this stuff. And let me just hit you with one more thing before we get back to Enter the Dragon. I know I kind of went off on a tangent. I couldn't hold it in anymore.
He says that all the time, by the way.
Yeah. This this here, as I throw all my weapons in the corner. If you guys want a good exercise and you're looking to shed some pounds, maybe, right here is the best thing to do that with, baby, a jump rope. I've had this jump rope for, I want to say, 16 years. It's a really thin cord, as you can see, but my instructor and my master for martial arts would let us train with outside instructors. He let people from Shotokan Karate come in, ninjutsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo, boxing, kickboxing, all that kind of stuff. And we had this one guy who came in. He was actually he was a really ripped dude, but he loved jump roping. Like it was his favorite form of cardio. And he taught us jump roping techniques. And when I really got into Bruce Lee and wanted to train like Bruce Lee, this right here was the thing that will get your footwork down, like I mentioned earlier, with the fencing and all that other stuff incorporated with your timing, with the jumping and the stuff like that. Really, 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 if you want to be good at martial arts and be like Bruce, get a jump rope. But that's my tangent for my my workout regimen, you know.
Hence the abs.
Yeah. Back to yes. Back to Enter the Dragon, Sanne. I know you took a plethora of notes. Hit me with some stuff. What we got?
Yeah, I have to look at the notes because I'm just like, I should get a jump rope, but then, the boobs.
That's
I
all
might
right.
knock myself out.
Fears for others. Fears for others, Sanne. Listen to Bruce.
Oh, yes. So, I mean, now that I see that, now I think of other scenes. But in the beginning, because I think of the other scene now, I like all the scenes where you see, Hong Kong, you see the harbor, you see them on the boats. I really love that. It's one of the reasons why I want to go to Hong Kong. It's just because all the Hong Kong movies that I saw, you always see those boats and those buildings and the 70s wardrobe, men in heels. Fuck yeah. But when they arrive at the island, and which basically where they have the whole what do you call it, buffet kind of thing, which is inspired by the Terry and the Pirates comic, the color wise. You see everybody like really numbing away all the food, and you see Bruce Lee sitting there like a boss. I don't know, like eating grapes or something. But he's like, I'm like, oh, it looks yummy. But at one point, you see Roper and Williams talking, and Roper is like, I have a feeling that we're being fattened for the kill.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty intense because a lot of people are enjoying it. They're getting swept away, especially later on when, some women throw the apple and the dagger, and then, oh, yeah, this will be your chick tonight. But everybody is just like really carried away, just exactly how Han has it all planned out. And then here you have three guys who are like, it's interesting, but what's the hidden message behind this?
No, that's a really good point.
Also happens in Mortal Kombat movie.
It does. But you know what that really reminded me of? Because if you really watch this movie, everything that happens in the movie ties back to Jeet Kune Do and Bruce Lee. Every single little thing. Like, seriously. That whole scene with them while Han is basically acting like he's like, oh, he's so generous and he's so humble and he's so welcoming and throwing this party and he's giving people these luxuries, like they're wearing these silk robes, and like Sana said, there's beautiful women around them and they're having a smorgasbord of food and drinking wine and eating whatever they want. And that reverts back to the very beginning of the movie when Bruce Lee says to the kid, never take your eyes off of the enemy. It's the exact same thing. Like, don't believe this facade. This guy is up to something, like Sana said. We don't know what it is. And Roper can kind of sense it, and Williams can kind of sense it, and Bruce Lee obviously senses it because he's not eating anything. But that's the whole point of it. Never take your eyes off the enemy. Nobody is this grandiose and this lavish without a reason. It's people just don't go like, hey, here you go. Here's a smorgasbord. Haha. They're onto something. And as the movie unfolds and starts to develop, you can see what Han really wants from these guys. And he tries to recruit them and do kind of crazy shit. But actually, here's another fun fact. Did you know? Here's what happens, okay? After the party scene and all this stuff, there's like this mistress lady. She's like the head mistress. She's like this blonde. I don't know who the actress is, but she basically is in charge of all these, like, basically prostitutes who are coming to have sex. Like,
Anna Capri.
there you go. Her. She's in charge. Did she pass? A lot of these people actually just recently passed away. Actually, the guy who played Roper passed away like 2 months ago.
John Saxon, yeah,
Yep,
and Jim Kelly in 2013.
2013, yep, exactly. Yep, I think Jim Kelly had cancer, and I think John Saxon passed away from like complications of pneumonia or something like that. But this lady, this actress, who has all these people. Basically, they go to Williams first, and Williams is like cooking up.
Yeah.
He takes like five of
Oh.
them. That one, that one, that one, that one, that one. And then he's like, "Sorry if I missed anybody." He's like, "But it's been a long day and I'm kind of tired." I love that line so much.
Yeah. Cracked me up. And
Freaking
when
Jim
I was younger,
Kelly.
I didn't get it, but now I'm like,
I
I
love him.
gotcha.
Jim Kelly is fucking great. I loved him as that character. He was perfect.
And
And
how
then
he was so into the music at first, like Mr. Williams, like Mr. Williams.
yeah, yeah. And then they go to Roper, and they do, or no, I think they go to Bruce Lee next, and
Yeah.
they bring the people in, and he doesn't want any of the people like the girls who come in with this head mistress lady. He's like, I want the girl who threw the star,
Mailing.
the star at my apple. And it turns out this Mei Ling or whatever is actually like another spy that was installed by the British government to infiltrate and like kind of like spy on Han to see what he was up to. But she comes to meet Lee. He doesn't want to use her for like sex or anything. He just wants to get information from her.
Hmm.
And she tells him like, I don't know what happens because I'm never allowed to leave the palace. Like I have to stay inside. He won't let anybody out after hours. Then it goes to Roper, and they bring the girls in, and he picks the head mistress. He's like, I want you. You're the one that I want. I already found the one I want. And they have like
Good choice.
they have a sexual relationship. Then what happens is, here's the fun fact I was coming up on. I know I rambled here, but what happens is William sneaks out, and the one girl because he has like five of them in his room, is like, you're not supposed to go off the palace grounds or go outside at night. He's like, come on, baby, I want to go out in the moonlight. So he goes out against the wishes of Han, who basically said you're not supposed to go outside. And he's pretty much just like practicing martial arts like outside in the moonlight, which is he's not doing anything wrong. But Bruce Lee also sneaks out. And Bruce Lee sneaks around the headquarters, and he's sneaking by people, and he finds like this. He knocks on this piece of metal that's like covered with these potted plants, and he finds out there's like a trap door, so he sneaks inside of it. And he takes a rope down, and he like discovers this underground lair. And as he discovers the lair, the one security guard who he almost jumps from behind, he avoids him because he doesn't want to get into a conflict if he doesn't have to. Again, Jeet Kune Do, like, don't exert yourself if you don't have to. So the guy finds the rope because he wrapped it around like this stone to get down, and he starts to cut it. And before he can cut the rope the whole way, Bruce like pulls the rope away and comes out on another side of the hatch and punches the guy in the face and starts beating up all these guards. And like you can see him screwing up the wall, and Williams is like, man, that guy's like a spider or something like that. I can't remember what he says.
But
the guy actually screwing up the wall is Jackie Chan. That's the fun fact. That was actually Jackie Chan. He actually did.
Yeah, I mean they were basically known then, Jackie and Samo, being the stunt people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. If they only knew that like what is it, like 3 or 4 years later that Jackie Chan would do Drunken Master.
Jackie Chan is also, I don't know if you knew this, the guy that Bruce Lee breaks into the thing with, and he starts fighting the guys with the nunchucks, and that whole scene with the sticks and stuff, like the video you posted on IG today, that scene, the guy who gets his neck broken in the one part with Bruce is Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Chan. It's pretty sweet.
So awesome. Yeah. Such legends. But what I also really like in this movie is the relationship between Roper and Williams. They have such chemistry also together. Like you really believe that they're like best friends. And what I really like about Roper in this is that his first fight against the guy is like 8-3. And constantly he's betting, blah, 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 blah. But later when he has to go against Bolo, it's not about gambling. He becomes serious and he just knocks the shit out of Bolo. I really like that moment where he just becomes more focused. It's more real. It's not about gambling. It's a matter of life and death. I really like the transition suddenly because he doesn't take shit serious because he's like the playboy, the gambler, and then he becomes serious. I love that moment.
That's a good moment.
And when he sees Williams, hanging, that was also the last scene that he filmed for this movie.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I was actually going to say that because I think that's what caused him to get really focused. Like he realized, you killed my fucking friend. And the thing was, like, when they get introduced to each other, they already know each other because they were in Vietnam together. He's like, "How you been since the war, man?" And he's like, "Oh, pretty good, you know." It's like they served in Vietnam together. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but like martial arts is such a huge impact. Like I said, I studied a Korean martial art, but Japan occupied Korea from I think 1910 till after World War II, like 1945 or something like that. So a lot of the influence, like Shotokan karate, that was founded by like the what was it, the Funakoshi family. That was actually an Okinawan martial art that they brought to Korea, and they learned from it. And then you get all these other arts that developed out of it, like Subak and Taeyek, and like the precursor to my art was the Subak Do Association. Then it became the United States Tang Soo Do Federation. Then it became the World Tang Soo Do Association. Like everything is mixed martial arts. Like it's all mixed, and I think that was Bruce's point. He was like, nothing is really traditional. It's all influenced by a bunch of different people. So what's the point if I change it up and do it my way instead of listening to this scripture basically, or this structure? Like I want to do it unorthodox, you know?
Yeah, wasn't John Saxon in real life Okinawan style as well?
John Saxon in real life was Shotokan karate. He was a master in Shotokan karate and in judo, which is a throwing style, Japanese throwing style, which comes from jujitsu. But if you ever
The
see people
one
grab,
thing I wanted to do when I was a kid.
yeah, we used to practice that in our art too because it was part of our training. We did the traditional stuff. We did a little bit of judo and we did a little bit of hapkido as well, with a little bit of Muay Thai, sort of in the free
Ooh,
sparring thing. So a lot
I
of
love
knees,
that Muay Thai.
a lot of knees to the face. Yeah, but
But also because of what was it? Not
Ong Bonk,
Bloodsport.
Ong
Not
Bonk.
Bloodsport. No, not Bloodsport. It's the other movie with Van Damme, where he goes to Thailand and like Mei Ling, good fuck. But you see the guy that he's fighting, that he has the Muay Thai style, that he just basically like warms up against like a concrete
Oh,
pole.
isn't it called Kickboxer?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. It's a good flick.
Oh, I thought that scene was intense.
Yeah. So many other scenes in this movie that are amazing. I mean, the entire movie. Here's another fun fact: the entire movie was actually filmed with no sound. It was just scenes, and then the director went in and dubbed the audio and stuff in later. I don't know if you knew that, but the whole movie was filmed silently.
Yeah, but that happened a lot in Hong Kong movies, you know, like
Yeah.
even when it's a Mandarin spoken actor and later it's spoken in Mandarin, it's out of sync. You're just like, eh.
Yeah, even watching it today, like some of the dialogue when they talk is a little off. But you know what? It just made me appreciate it even more because I was like, okay, it's 2020 now. This happened in 1973. So that was like seriously almost 50 years ago now. Think about that. And it's like the movie still kicks ass 50 years later. Like they didn't even fucking film it with sound, and it's amazing. I mean, think about that. Like in the grand scheme of things, that just goes to show you like how
Badass.
yeah how much they valued like the spirit and authenticity of the martial arts and of the diverse array of people who comprise the martial artists and the actors in this. Like they really did give a shit about the actors and the people. You know, it was great. So it's amazing.
And who was it? Let me check real quick. Uh, yeah, Williams. He goes with the morning thing, the morning ritual, the first time. He goes against Parson, who I literally see as the bully of the
Yeah,
beginning of the movie.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, when I was younger and I used to say, I fucking can't stand that actor because he annoys the shit out of me, my mom would say, oh, that means he or she is doing a good job. So now I look at it differently. I hate that guy, but he is doing a good job because he really is a fucking bully.
yeah. Some of the scenes in that with him that were great. Like the guy Son is talking about is like this another contestant in this tournament that Han's hosting or whatever, and he apparently doesn't like Asian people because he's on this boat and like this Asian guy's bringing out water or something to all the people, and he like knocks him over and starts like kicking them. And Bruce kind of
Mm.
like, you can tell Bruce wants to beat his ass, but he's kind of like, I'll fix him another way. And after he
See
after he
that
starts
he gives
kicking,
a rope to the
yeah,
kid.
he starts kicking all these Asian people, and Bruce is like sitting there. Then he goes over to like dick around with Bruce Lee, and Bruce is like looking out over the sea, and he has his hand like on this wooden thing, and the guy keeps going like this, like brushing his hand by, like he's gonna hit Bruce. And Bruce is like,
Indeed,
"What are you doing?"
Louie.
Yeah, yeah, I know it. It's not gonna happen. Sorry,
In the backstage only.
not with all the not with all the legality entanglements we'll get into. I appreciate that, Louis. I'm glad somebody wants to see my black belt.
He doesn't want to show off his jump rope abs.
Yeah. But yeah, like Sana said, then he's like, well, if you want to fight me, he's like, how about we go to that island over that little island and we'll just get on this dinghy and this boat and go over. And the guy's like, oh yeah, let's do it. So Bruce like acts like he's gonna untie the boat and get on a boat with them, and then he just like leaves the boat out to sea and the water's splashing up, and he's like, don't you try to pull yourself up or I will let go of this line and you'll be gone into the sea. And he gives the rope to the kids who this guy was bullying to hold on to, and they're like, ha ha ha, like laughing. It's like, yes, you got him. It's so good.
And I think it's time to touch upon one of the most amazing Asian villains in martial arts movies ever, Bolo Young.
He is great. He is great.
What I really like, I mean, he's a guy that I hated at first. I was like, oh man, I can't stand him. But he's doing a good job because I later saw him in movies with Jean-Claude Van Damme and all that stuff. But what I think is an interesting fact is that this movie was from 1973. He does a movie with Bruce Lee. 13 years later, in 1986, he does a movie with his son, Brandon Lee, Legacy of Rage, again being the bad guy. I mean, how honored and special must it have been for Bolo to first do a movie with the legend and then later with his son.
Oh yeah, another legend. His son is also a legend. I mean, I consider Brandon Lee like a legendary actor. Like these are two guys whose time was like way too short. You know, they could have churned out so much more amazing stuff, and it's a shame. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And he was also in that movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think he was in one of the Bloodsport movies, wasn't he? Didn't he play? Didn't he fight Jean-Claude? Yeah.
With
yeah.
the cocaine or something that he throws in the eyes, but he's also in Double Impact
with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah,
so cool.
It is cool. It's so cool how many, like we talked about this earlier, how so many actors like really blew up from this movie. Even Jim Kelly, like after this movie, he did like 3 or 4 more Hollywood like big budget martial arts cop-esque movies because of Enter the Dragon. Like they loved his acting so much that I mean, it was really like a big role for him to take up. And then obviously we mentioned Jackie Chan, who later became one of the greatest to this day, one of the greatest like, martial arts blockbuster stars of all time.
Sammo
Hung, yeah, exactly. And another interesting thing too is he's not in this movie, but Bruce Lee's teacher, Ip Man, is played by an amazing actor. If you guys have ever seen those movies, Donnie Yen. I mean, without Bruce Lee, I don't know if they would have made those Ip Man movies. I don't know if they would have even been like, yeah, let's make an Ip Man movie. I think the success of movies like Enter the Dragon and this whole sweet 1960s and 70s kung fu wave really, really cemented martial arts internationally, you know.
And Donnie Yen and Sammo Hung are also in a movie from 2005. It's called Sao La or something, 2, as in the number 2. And they're, just do yourself a favor after this. Just look up Donnie Yen versus Sammo Hung. It takes place in a bar of Sammo Hung. it will blow your fucking cheeks apart. It's just that awesome. Really.
There you go. Keys is calling the what's his name below young that guy.
Bolo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a tank of a human. He said he was the Chinese Bane. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was born in the darkness, bred by it. The Chinese Bane. You can't get past me, Batman. Oh, I love it.
That's a lovely, lovely voice.
Nice.
Oh, that's probably one of the movies that you were talking about with Jim Kelly.
I think it was.
Is it Three the Hard Way? Let me write this down
I think
because
it is. I think it is. Yeah.
I want to see. I want to watch.
Absolutely awesome movies. They're fantastic. Ip Man, great movies.
Oh,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Without question, amazing. He was my favorite part of the movie Rogue One. I'm a huge Star Wars fan too. He was the best part of it, in my opinion.
oh yeah. It's
Chirrut
the only
Imwe,
reason why I wanted to watch
amazing.
it.
Yeah, Chirrut Imwe, like a blind dude with a staff. He's kicking ass, and like I said, his staff's my favorite weapon. So I was like, man, that's badass. I loved it.
And also when Ming-Na Wen was announced for The Mandalorian, I was like, she's also amazing. Hong Kong 97. And she played the amazing Chong Li.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, this movie is so it's perfect. There's nothing about this movie that I would remove, that I would take out, that I would change. Every single thing in this movie is absolutely it is so Bruce Lee. It's not even funny. I love all the other actors and actresses in it. I'm not, don't get me wrong here, but like I said earlier, everything in this movie reverts back to his lifestyle, his teachings, his philosophy. Every single thing. Like, name a scene and I can tell you how it reverts back to Bruce Lee. I mean, like, it's just at the end when he smashes the mirrors when he's fighting Han.
8,000 mirrors.
Yeah, he smashes a bunch of these mirrors, and it's only 10 minutes long, but it's one of the best. Like, to this day, it's one of the greatest scenes in film or cinema that I can even imagine. Like, I can still remember the entire scene in my head after watching it since I was a kid. That's how amazing it is. I mean, a lot of movies.
I do imagine that it wasn't even scripted.
Exactly. But him smashing the mirrors and all that kind of stuff and destroying that image all goes back to what his teacher said at the beginning of the movie, which is Bruce Lee's philosophy that my opponent doesn't exist. I'm smashing it. All I need to do is focus on the moment, the technique. That's exactly what it's about. And I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of the things in the movie are so key to that. Like, when he's getting ready to kick Han the first time when they're in the museum fighting each other, Han pretty much does the same move and they end up like crossing paths and Bruce can't get the kick off and he gets his stomach all cut up. If you notice that, Bruce doesn't block it. He just lets it happen because he couldn't intercept the technique. Then when he tries to do it again and they jump, Bruce expects this and anticipates it. He intercepts the technique and kicks Han right in the face. It's like Jeet Kune Do. I mean, it's all throughout the movie. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I mean, the martial arts hints and just studying styles and techniques of martial arts and that is unbelievable. It's off the charts. It's off the charts.
I really love his unimpressed look when he goes against O'Hara, and O'Hara tries to be like all intimidating by hitting the board, and he's like, "Boards don't hit back." Like, bitch, please.
I love the scene where he breaks his neck and he just jumps in the air and he's like, what, lands on him. He's like, oh, just sitting there shaking.
Yeah, the emotion, like.
God. That right there was what I was talking about. That whole key explosion. It was right there. He was just like, I mean, the way they shot that where it's slow-mo and you can see him jumping up in the air and it's kind of slowed down a little bit and then he comes down. And then as soon as he comes down, you can hear him just exhale all the energy, like, whoa, like letting it out. Right there was
again. Perfect. When you think of Bruce Lee, you think of all the sounds that he made. And who didn't make those sounds loud in the streets, in your backyard, in your bedroom, outside playing with kids when you start like fighting? And wah, wah. Who didn't do that?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if you know about martial arts or not, but what he also did was his expression. That's actually, there's a term for that. And we actually had it when we would like throw punches or kicks or fight. It was called a key up. Key up. bring your ki up. Like, bring your ki up to a level. So what it does is it's supposed to channel your ki. So you would go, like you would throw a punch and go, huh, huh, you know? But he just did it to a point where it was even more keyed up, because he was like, I mean, he would hold it and exhale it, you know? He would have like, he actually changed it to part of his breathing pattern. So when he exhales and he goes, oh, like that, like when he's doing that, he's he's anticipating somebody to strike. That's the difference between Jeet Kune Do. He's anticipating the strike because he doesn't want to tense himself up. He's getting ready to absorb shock just in case somebody attacks, and he can do the interception. That's why his ki up is so much longer and louder. So when he releases all that energy after he breaks so hard his neck, it's because his ki was built up so high that he had to release all of it by the long-winded breath. But it's actually, that's what it's called. It's called a ki up. That's what it's from.
I didn't know that. So now I will look at the Bruce Lee movies totally different.
Yeah, whenever he exhales that, because we used to spar, and like when we would hit somebody, we would go, ha, ha, you know, like, ha, ha, like we would throw the ki up out because it was an extension of our ki, like our power. In Chinese martial arts, it's called chi. In Korean and Japanese, it's called ki. It's a different spelling, but same thing, you know? So.
Yeah, but technically, the Chinese characters, the entire alphabet, and a shitload of characters, Japan adapted that alphabet into there. So you have two pronunciations in Japanese, the on and the kun. The on is based on the Chinese, and the kun is based on the Japanese. Hence why it's so fucking complicated, because you have characters that mean like 15 different things, and I'm just like, what?
You were saying what? The Chinese characters?
Yeah. You have, in Japan, or in Japanese, you have 3 alphabets. The hiragana, which is the curvy 1 letters.
Yeah,
which is what you see with games and karaoke.
Here we go.
And then you have the kanji.
Here's some crazy Chinese characters there.
And they have like a shitload of different meanings too. So
there's like,
whenever I'm studying, I'm just like, oh.
How many characters in here?
And then it all also depends in the sentence structure. And it's like, mind is blown.
Sweet. Yeah, Sanne and I are big language like people too. We are language buffs. We like Asian stuff, so yeah.
Yeah, Kia, exactly.
Nice. He used to say Keon. His name, Keon. Keon. Yeah. I love it. Keys, did you practice karate, or what rank did you get to, man? Did you actually practice that? That's pretty sweet. I didn't know that.
Hence the tank tops.
What style and what rank and what art, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah. Other scenes I love in the movie is when he's like not afraid. The next time he goes to infiltrate the underground lair, there's a cobra there.
Oh.
And he's just kind of like, fuck it. He like puts it in the bag and intercepts it. And he uses the cobra in the movie. Like, he takes it into this room where there's a radio interceptor, because earlier in the movie, the British guy's like, there's a device on the island you can send signals through. So basically, this time when Bruce infiltrates the underground lair we talked about, I don't know, half hour ago, he goes down with the rope again and gets inside of it, and he goes to this like radio room where these like 2 guys are at, and he has this cobra that they put on top of the thing so nobody would get in, but obviously it's Bruce Lee, so he doesn't give a shit. He goes in and he literally takes the cobra out of the bag and slaps it on the back of the head to piss it off, and then slaps it again to piss it off, and then puts it in the room, and the guy's like, oh shit, like there's a cobra in here. So they get this chair and throw it out the glass. They run in. Bruce goes in and sends like a message to the British intelligence agency, like, hey, look, this is the location, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And the snake's like crawling around on the floor trying to slither up his leg, and he like steps on it so it doesn't bite him. Like, it's an amazing scene. And then after that, he jumps out of the room and he gets ambushed by a bunch of guards, and he's doing his thing. You know, he gets the bow staff out, he gets the sticks out. They're like sort of like tonfas, but they're just like sticks. and he uses nunchucks in the one scene, and he knocks 3 dudes out, and then Han kidnaps him, puts him in like custody, and forces Roper to fight him. And Roper's like, "No, I'm not going to fight him." Blah blah blah. And then he makes him fight Bolo, and then that's when the energy and stuff comes out, and all that shit happens, and it's just amazing. It's amazing.
Like just that scene with the guards, that entire fight, which lasts for like what, 5 minutes? It represents everything that we know Bruce Lee as for. You see it in The Big Boss, and I mean, the titles of the other movies are so confusing to me because the one is called Chinese Express or something, and then the other one calls it like this, but it all comes. But it's confusing, right? I mean, I told you today about one movie, like it has a bunch of different titles, but it's the same fucking movie. It happened a lot. Oh wait, Keon replied.
Oh yeah, Keon replied to my thing. Let's see what he said.
Goju.
Extracurriculars didn't schedule proper when I was a kid due to parents' work schedules. Yeah, man, you know what? Same here. It's funny you mentioned that because I was in football, I was in a bowling league, I was in martial arts, and I was in softball as a kid. And I got to the point where I was like, listen, I'm choosing one and that's it because I don't have time for this shit. And I picked karate. So you probably picked something else, but I picked karate. But you know what, man? You got the yellow belt, dude. You got the experience. You kind of know what I'm about. That's pretty cool. That's awesome, man. So you know some of the stuff I'm kind of describing here. So
let's go, Keon. Ich, ni, san, shi, go.
Ours was il, e, sam, sa, hana, tul, set, net, tasat, yasat, ilgu, yodel,
in Korea, you have 2 different ways of counting as well. Hana, du, set.
Net, tasat, yasat, yeah. Ilgu, yodel, ahab, yo, yeah. Or il, e, sam, sa, and I can't remember the. We used to use the hana a lot, so I can barely remember the il. Il, e, sam, sa, set, net, tasat, yasat.
Korean. I just know 사랑해.
I don't know karate, but I know crazy. Yep, you're on the stream, man. That's us. Thanks.
Pepperoni.
Pepperoni pizza. I love it. Shanghai Noon quotes. Right? So many scenes in this. And Sanne, you literally wrote a dissertation on this earlier today, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I mean, we basically went through the scenes that I wrote down. Jesus. I also like when he's fighting Han, when he's like tasting his own blood, and then later.
Oh, I love that part too. He takes his finger across his stomach, and he's just like, it's like, yeah. I love it. I love that scene too. It's one of my favorite scenes. Some of his facial expressions in that are just like, he's literally like, even watching that movie, because I haven't seen it in a few years. I mean, he's godlike to me. Like, I put him on this pedestal where it's like, I watch him and I'm just like, man, that guy is fucking badass. Like, I don't think out of all the other people who influence me, like heroes and stuff, like anybody, in my opinion, for me personally, comes close to him. Like I mentioned yesterday, like I love Schwarzenegger, but even Schwarzenegger, it's like Bruce Lee by a mile. It's like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I love you, Schwarzenegger. You're great, but nobody touches Bruce Lee for me. It's the nostalgia, and it's the martial arts connection, and it's all that stuff too. But
and of course, as a girl, I think Bruce Lee was the first celebrity that I had a crush on, because I was like,
that's because he was going, wah.
Oh yeah, I was like, what are me?
Yeah.
But even I was like inspired. Like, I wanted to do it, but my mom was like, you're not gonna fight because I know you, right? And I'm like, come on, Shamon.
Well, the thing about martial arts is they are defensive tactics. You're not really supposed to use them for offense. They're defensive tactics to defend yourself. But you're right. I mean, I've seen it. Like, I just mentioned that kid or actually that guy, he was actually like 10 years older than me at that time. He was like, and I broke his nose. He was a really like, I don't know what happened in his life or why he was the way he was, but he was just a really angry person, But in my studio, I wasn't going to discriminate against everybody. I was trying to train people to help people. Like, hey, man, come here to get your anger out. We'll teach you how to be like humble. We'll teach you how to like, loosen up a little bit. But he never really did. He was always just kind of like too aggressive for his own good. And he was kind of like a troublemaker student. And like I said, maybe I shouldn't have did what I did, but yeah.
Yeah, and
Hopefully,
it's nice that you mentioned that, to get your anger out, because that is also one of the reasons why eventually, once I get a bit better, I want to do martial arts myself, to get that out of my system, but also learn a lot more about myself, because to have more patience, and I mean, it's so much deeper than, oh yeah, I know a fighting style. I actually once, I just remembered it. It was in school. I think I was like 9 years old. There was this bitch in class. She probably thought the same of me, but she was doing taekwondo. Her parents were deaf, and I was telling her something, and she's like being annoying, like, like not listening. And I was like, "What, are you deaf or something?" Which kind of got a bit of rage out of her. And she used a taekwondo move against me, which caused a lot of shitstorm in school, because they were like, she is practicing martial arts, and the move that she did, like, she really went like near the throat area, and they also contacted her school and stuff, like she got in trouble with it because she was not allowed to do it, because it's what, usually when you're young you give like a bitch slap, like fuck you bitch, but this was a fucking serious attack. I mean, I still was able to dodge it because bitch, I watched Bruce Lee. uh, but it was a serious thing, and I didn't realize it up until my parents came to school. At least my mom, she started to become like a raging bull in class against the teacher, and well, her parents were there too, but as I said, they were deaf, so there was not really communication. So another one had to come in there to interpret it, and it was so much. It was like a shitstorm, and I just said, like, "Can I have a day off now? Can
here's
you
a
tell me?" And
here's a bit of advice for you, just in case somebody tries to choke you again. Here's a martial arts lesson. I can see if I can do it over video conference here. Okay, if there's space between you and you're not up against a wall, all right. Somebody tries to reach up and choke you like that. Check this out. All you have to do is turn your body away like this and turn around. That's all you have to do. If you actually use your body and your momentum of your body to turn, it'll loosen up their hand. Like a person's hand physiologically can't go like this all the way around, right? So if somebody tries to reach straight in and grab your neck, like let's just do an instance like, okay, say this is my neck and this is the hand. This is my face facing you. Somebody tries to reach in and grab my neck. All I have to do is go like this and walk away. Not really walk away because they're probably going to pursue you, but turn real quick to loosen yourself up, and then you can recuperate and see what the hell the next move is going to be. Because I taught self-defense classes too, because I used to teach a lot of juvenile women who were afraid. We used to teach rape classes, like so they wouldn't get raped, like a self-defense against rape class. And we taught that a lot with the choke. And I taught blade forms too, like if somebody attacks you with a knife, how to disarm them. We used to do all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So if somebody takes a knife around your neck, if somebody puts a knife against your back, if somebody comes at you with a knife, if somebody slashes this way, if somebody slashes overhead, we had all kinds of different defensive maneuvers and techniques.
but as we were talking about the movie yesterday, when there's panic, is it still effective? Right?
Well, here's the thing. I think you're right, and I think it comes with training, and I think that's what Bruce Lee's talking about. That's why you can't have I, and that's why you can't have opponent, because you literally have to focus on how you're going to intercept somebody else's strike or their technique. Because here's the thing. If you think in your head that person is going to stab you, just like when he gets slashed across the chest by Han, he doesn't give a shit. Like, he knows he got cut. He sits there and licks it, and he's like, he has to think in his head, like, or feel, I'm going to beat this guy no matter what. I don't care if I'm not standing after he's done, but I'm going to make sure that he's done, Like, and we were always taught the same thing. In the chance that you're in a fight, there's a chance, if somebody comes at you with a knife, there's a really, really high chance that you are going to get cut. It might not be lethally, but actually when we were practicing, I actually have a cut. I have a scar on my hand. I don't know if you can see it. You see it right there below my ring? That's a cut from practicing from martial arts with a knife. I was trying to disarm someone and I cut the blade cut my hand. Like, you're gonna get cut. It's bound to happen, but you need to execute it without panic, and fear is for others. Don't be afraid. You have to go in there and nail it. So
I see
let's go to the
some
chat.
weird shit going on in the chat. Judo chop Austin Powers.
That's a man, baby. Uh, Austin Danger Powers. That's not mine, baby. Swedish made penis and larger pumps than me. That is my bag, baby. By Austin Danger Powers. Yes. I was just talking about Austin Powers with somebody from work the other day. It's crazy you guys mentioned it. Awesome. Love it.
Conspiracy confirmed.
They're always after me, Lucky Charms. Yeah. But anything else about Enter the Dragon? I mean, I could go on here for another 10 hours, but what do you think? Any other scenes stick out to you?
Well, I think we pretty much went through all of them. I mean, the entire movie is just amazing because of the nostalgia, the impact that it has made, and everyone will have some emotional connection to it. Like I have it with my mom, and so it means so much more than just a movie. And as I said in the post that I did earlier today, a movie is that good when no one has the balls to reboot it.
Yeah, until the reboot for Enter the Dragon happens here.
Yeah, but think about it. I mean,
It'll
if
never happen.
anyone would want to reboot a Bruce Lee movie, you have so many fans around the world that would be like, and I wouldn't want to be that guy who's going to, step in those shoes and pretend to be like the new like Bruce Lee character. No way. Like, I think even they wanted to reboot the original The Crow with Brandon Lee, but it got so much hate that they were like, okay, fuck it, we're not gonna do it.
You can't.
Mm.
Like, you can't. I mean, we talked about this before. There are certain like yesterday on your stream, there were certain movies that you just cannot do this sequel and reboot shit with.
Mm.
And this, like you just mentioned, is definitely one of them. Like, when the movie's so good that it influenced an entire generation, if not generations that followed that, in martial arts. And the thing that's so great about this movie is there's nobody like Bruce Lee. There's people out there who practice Jeet Kune Do right now, and his specific style is called Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do because that was his Chinese name, Li Jun Fan. So nobody really practices his style of martial art because, like he said, it's not an art. Bruce Lee was the only Bruce Lee, so nobody's ever going to be the next Bruce Lee, if that makes any sense. Even Brandon Lee was his own son. He wasn't Bruce Lee. I mean, he's amazing, but
he also didn't want to be the new Bruce Lee. That was never his intention. And I think
well, yeah, you're right.
he learned it the hard way.
Well, yeah, exactly. His dad would like lecture him probably about that stuff. Like, listen, you're your own person. Your style of martial art is your style. You might call it Jeet Kune Do, but that's just a name. It doesn't. It's always flowing like water. It's always changing. It's not like mine. Mine's different.
Yeah, and I think also to think about it that this was Bruce Lee's wish to make a movie from American production that will go worldwide and introduce all martial arts to the rest of the world. He wanted to do that. That was his intention. That was his goal in life. And to think that even though it had a sad ending to his life, he still did what he had in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's really sad, sitting here and thinking about it. Like, it really is really, really sad. Like, especially watching it again for me. And I told you this earlier today. Like, I miss Bruce Lee, man.
Oh
And
yeah,
I know he passed away before I was even born. But when you're a kid, you don't understand that till you're older, you know. And I really, really started to understand it when I started practicing martial arts and really creating my own style because I was a teacher. So, like, to teach kids my style of Tung Soo Do, they were going to learn a little bit of Jeet Kune Do with that. You know, it wasn't just the traditional stuff. And it was because of him that a lot of my students went on to get their own black belts and win their own tournaments and win their own trophies and teach themselves, you know. So, um, without that wisdom and that knowledge, and like you said, like the ability to spread his notion of martial arts to the entire world, I never would have had the opportunity to do that. And he's a huge influence. So
he is.
I can't. I mean, I'm like ready to fucking cry. That's like, it's like, it's like you're losing like almost like a mentor. Like honestly, I hate to say that because I really didn't know him personally, but I knew his style personally because I practiced it religiously for years. You know, it's really sad.
It is.
But I do want to say this: I give credit to the director of this movie too, Robert Klaus, the guy who directed this, because he did an amazing job of tying everybody
Mm.
together, making sure everybody was got their own amount of screen time, and everybody was kind of created. Everybody shined in this. There wasn't a character that was bad, you know. Even the guy who played Han, I don't remember his name in real life, but he's like a villain character in a lot of movies. He
Something like Shikien.
something like that. It's like Shien Ken or something like that.
Mm.
He was amazing. I mean, he was an amazing actor. I mean, everybody in here, like we mentioned earlier, John Saxon, Jim Kelly, Bruce Bruce fucking Lee. I mean, oh my god. Uh, and then Klaus also did Game of Death and like restructure that and got new actors and kind of made a newer story around it. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Game of Death, but it's the one with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Really underrated flick. I love it, and he directed that as well.
Is that
And
with the tall guy?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, yeah.
Yeah.
He wears the iconic yellow jumpsuit in that with the sneakers, and he has the yellow nunchucks in that. And the scene with him
Ah,
with the nunchucks is it's like a meme where he turns them into lightsabers, like lightsaber nunchucks. I don't know if you guys ever seen it, but it's really cool.
again, never underestimate the little guy.
Listen, the way I see it is though, Bruce was not little, you know.
No, but as in physical appearance, because that
Yeah.
was also what he was, at least that is what it was saying to me with the two insects fighting. The appearance, the one is taller, the one is smaller. Therefore, you naturally assume by its appearance.
Oh yeah, very good point. I wasn't even thinking about that. That's a really good perception of the martial art again. You know, that's it ties right into the martial arts. Like I said, any scene in that movie will tie back. Just because your opponent's bigger, that doesn't mean that you can't beat them. Bruce bet
Hmm.
on the little one, it won, right? It's
Yeah,
all,
and you wouldn't think that Mr. Roper, John Saxon, would be able to go against Bolo Young. Like,
but he did.
because he was like, breaking people and stuff like that. But yeah, because now it was real. Now it was not a gamble.
Oh yeah, or even Bruce against O'Hara. You see O'Hara, he's like this big menacing dude, and Bruce is like this tiny guy, but he destroys him. Like it wasn't even a
Yeah.
contest. Like O'Hara didn't even hit him.
I also like that when he tries to kind of when he goes apeshit, by wanting to grab Bruce Lee's leg and then hunt Wada. And then later again with the bottle, Wada, like this is not what it's supposed to be. What you're doing is not the way.
Well,
But the desperation and the panic always that hits you,
that's the
that
anger.
makes the situation different. I mean, as I said, what you said with practicing for rape. I mean, you can really, I mean, you can teach me for a fucking year what to do, but when shit actually happens, you don't know because panic will hit you and your body can be like frozen and
Yeah, part of it is panic. I agree with you, but I think also part of it is anger. Here's another good point. I had another mentor in my life who was my college professor in college. He taught me. I took like a dozen history classes with this guy. His name was Dr. Andrews. He was a fantastic man, like a genius, really smart. And one of the things he said to me when he first met me, he was like, "There's something about you." He's like, "Were you in the service?" I was like, "No." I was like, "I was a martial artist for like 15 years, though." He was like, "I knew there was something about you. You have like this aura about you." And he said to me, and he was like, we were having this discourse one time and just talking, and he was talking to me about martial arts, and he said, "You know what? There's a quote. I can't remember from who it was from, but he said it to me, and he's like, whenever you get angry, he's like, there's no point in getting angry about anything. He's like, because when you get angry at something, he's like, you're letting go of all your feelings and you're letting that emotion rule you."
Mm.
And he said, you can never make a rational decision when you're angry. And like, it took me a while to like sit there and think about what he was talking about. Like, I sat there literally in his office for like a half hour, like, what the hell is he talking about? Then it finally hit me, and I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Did you ever get angry or pissed off at something? This is like,
Me all the time.
well, yeah, okay, just think about like, even in a
Especially
relationship.
when I'm near my period.
Well, yeah. Think about relationships for a second when you get angry. Like somebody says something you don't like, and you're like, oh, well, you know, you get pissed off. So what did that reaction that you sent back or like texted back or called back or said to that person actually do? Did it solve anything? Was it rational? Or did it
But
make the
it
person even
felt
more pissed
right
off?
at the time.
Exactly, but take that back and apply it to the O'Hara thing with the bottles and stuff.
Count to 10.
Maybe if he didn't break the bottles and try to attack Bruce, he would still be alive. Maybe he wouldn't be dead. He basically let his emotion take advantage of him to the point where Bruce was like, you know what? You're an evil son of a bitch. You're dead. You know?
He was dead anyways because he fucked his sister up.
True, but I don't know if Bruce would have killed him had it not come to the bottle
No,
thing.
that's also the thing when you see that emotion when he jumps on him, as you said, the energy explode, but also, there's something in his eyes like I did something that I wasn't planning on doing, but he beforehand already apologized for it towards his sister and his mom at the grave.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. It's cool how that got tied together. But you're right. I think the emotion in his eyes, like when he said that, like when he talked about it in the beginning of the movie, you need to feel it. He felt like he did something wrong. Like he took somebody's life. Like
Mm.
it wasn't like he wanted to kill anybody, but he did, you know. And another thing about the movie is he kills Han too, right? But I think he wanted to kill him. I think that was like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's up, Jeff?
Barbarella.
I'm glad it's one of your favorite movies, man. One of mine too. One of Sauna's too. But
Eh.
yeah, we love it, man. We're glad you love it too, man. It's a fantastic flick.
Oh.
Oh, same here, brother. In my opinion, right now, saying on the record here, greatest martial artist of all time. He could have did so much more too. What he did with that little amount of time that he got to do stuff, revolutionary, man.
Yeah, but if you think about it, what Bruce Lee was about to do, and also Brandon Lee with The Crow. I mean, you can say a lot of things like The Crow became only big because of his death. No, what he did in The Crow is spectacular to begin with. And people are saying like, oh, if he was still alive, he would have done The Matrix. And as I said earlier in my post on Instagram, like this is one of those what if moments. But I don't think the world was ready.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it was
unfortunate.
really dragon fucking power, like
No,
so
you're right.
powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. I don't think the world was ready for the stuff that they did in the first place. You know,
Mm.
I don't think the world was ready for Enter the Dragon or, like you said, it's called Chinese Connection, but it's not really Chinese Connection. It's Big Boss, same movie.
Yeah.
And then Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon and Enter the Dragon and Game of Death. I don't think anybody was ready for those movies, let alone stuff that would have happened. And like you mentioned, Brandon Lee with The Crow and stuff like that. Like nobody was ready for something that different or that unique. But think about it this way. I'm going to sit here and say this. I do think that their death had something to do with the popularity of it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that they're amazing movies with full of emotion and feeling and spirit, you know? People sometimes gravitate to that kind of like thing where they're like, "Oh man, this movie's so great because he passed away." It's like I might be going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but like Heath Ledger with the Joker, okay, in the movie The Dark Knight. Dark Knight's my favorite comic book movie of all time. All right, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Period. But it's not because Heath Ledger died. It's
Mm.
because Heath Ledger was fucking amazing in the movie. I mean, he could still be alive today, and I'd still probably say that's the best fucking movie he's ever done because just the way he portrayed the character in that movie, just like this movie with Bruce Lee, the way that he showcases his true wisdom and his, I mean, Jeet Kune Do is life for Bruce Lee, was life for Bruce Lee. And this movie is Jeet Kune Do. This movie is Bruce Lee. If you can't separate Enter the Dragon from Bruce Lee. You can't do it. It's much like other actors. You could say like, oh yeah, when when Schwarzenegger did that movie Sabotage, it was pretty crappy. You can kind of like remove that from his repertoire and be like, yeah, let's forget about that one. With Bruce, you can't do that. With Bruce, when you see all his movies and you line them up, you're like, every single one is like fucking amazing. Like you can't separate his. Same thing with Brandon Lee. He only did a couple, but you can't separate them.
Mm.
You know.
I mean, and what he did with the character Eric Draven, I mean, it was really stepping out of his comfort zone. Right. I mean, Brennan Lee as a goth, oh baby. But, you know, I think everybody that has seen the scene, or at least the movie, who grew up with it, like we did, there's so many scenes that you will think of. Like a silly scene with a little girl, like, do you want onions or your hot dogs? No, they make you fart big time. Or it can't rain all the time.
Love it.
And when he goes up to Darla, like a girl always looks up to her mother like an angel figure. I mean, he was just bomb next level suddenly, like he was first trying to, because he wanted to act and he knew martial arts, but of course the legacy of his father was like, I think also in the way, so people would expect him only to do that, and then he was stepping out of the comfort zone, or maybe he was stepping into the comfort zone, maybe with the Crow, hence why he's so amazing in it.
Well, here's another thing I want to mention because that's a really good point. We talked about this before too, and we said this on your stream yesterday. We are people who like a diverse array of stuff. We're not going to focus on one thing. And with Brandon Lee in particular, he was a musician too. I don't know if a lot of people know that. He was a musician. Like Keanu Reeves is a musician too. Keanu Reeves like played bass in like an actual band. Like he has like records and stuff.
Mad Dog.
Yeah, exactly. Like Brandon Lee did the same thing, and his character in The Crow, Eric Draven's a rock star, and he's in a band, and it's a different look for his character, but like you said, it cements him in a different light than his father, but also retains that same kind of like legendary status that his dad was able to cement. I mean, in a different way. The way he carries himself. Like, here's another thing about martial arts, and I'm tying this back to Enter the Dragon. The way you carry yourself, the way you approach people, how you act. Like, his acting techniques, I can guarantee you, were somehow influenced by his father's teachings in martial arts. Because he was just so stoic. Like, Bruce and Brandon were both really stoic guys. Like, they didn't let shit get to them. They were really positive and upbeat, down to earth, appreciated stuff. But they were just legendary people. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, just legendary.
Oh, yeah.
But
again, what if?
What if? I know, right? It's unbelievable. And here's another fun fact. Ip Man actually died, like, not even a year before Bruce Lee died. I think Ip Man died in 72 and Bruce Lee died in 73. Isn't that crazy? It's insane.
Oh, Jeff is referring to what you were talking about earlier in the stream.
Yes, Jeff. If you go back, if you're going to rewatch the stream, I talked about that at length for like 10 minutes. Yeah, one of my favorites too, man. Absolutely, absolutely one of my favorites. Water's formless; it can take any shape. It can be anything. It's really adaptable. It can crash. It can be like a really slow moving current, a really hard moving current. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, man. One of my favorite things about Jeet Kune Do and his philosophy in general. Yeah.
Hmm.
Another thing about the movie I want to talk about too, before we kind of like start to wrap this up a little bit, is Han, the character, tries to recruit all these people. Like I said, he understands that they're onto him, and he tries to pull them to the dark side, so to speak, so they don't like basically blow his operation on this island. When when Bruce sneaks out at night, he thinks it's William's character, and Williams is like, "No, I don't know who it was." And he knows who it was because he saw Bruce Lee climbing the tower, Lee's character climbing the tower, but he won't rat out his friend. So when Han kind of pressures him, uh, you said this earlier. He turns to him and he's like, "Man, you're like straight out of a comic book." And he sends all these guys after him, and he starts beating the shit out of him. Then Han basically overpowers him, kills him, strings him up in these chains, and has him like over this like pool of water as he's taking like Roper on this tour of this underground facility that Bruce Lee infiltrated like before. He's trying to recruit Roper because he understands Roper's character is very into gambling and taking chances and all this kind of stuff. So he figures, maybe I'll get Roper to join me. He'll take a chance on this business, this trafficking. And underground in this cavern, they have like drunkards and prisoners locked up, like Chinese from different Chinese cities locked up, and then they have these women in this other side of the thing that they're drugging up to basically traffic and be prostitutes. So it's cool at the end too because Roper doesn't want to get killed, so he's kind of like, yeah, maybe I'll think about it, and then he leaves, and then Han just finds out that like, okay, this is bullshit. Like he's not going to join, so we're just going to make him and Bruce Lee fight each other. And obviously, we told you about what happens with that. You know, Roper fights Bolo and overpowers him, and then at that point in time, when Bolo gets overpowered, Han gets pissed off because they won't fight each other, and he basically sends every student on the island after Roper
Yeah.
and Bruce, and they're just like beating the shit out of everybody. But then what happens is the spy who we talked about earlier, what was her name, Sana?
Mei Ling.
Mei Ling. Well, Bruce Lee must have told her, it doesn't show it in the movie, but he must have told her, like, hey, look, there's this underground thing downstairs. You need to go release these prisoners. She goes down with this key and unlocks the gates, and all those drunkards, supposedly drunkards that Han called them, come out.
And also that moment where she looks at Bruce Lee, like, I'm with you.
Yeah. And then what happens is the people who were entrapped, like the prisoners, start fighting Han's, like, posse or whatever, all these students he had on the island. And, yeah, it's just like the slugfest at the end. It's really cool to see the different styles and stuff and fighting. And there's a scene with Bolo too, where the guards, according to Han, didn't do their job. So Bolo just starts killing these random people, like breaking their necks and snapping their necks and shit. It's like, what the hell? And then Williams is like, Han says something to him. He's like, what's the matter? Didn't you like that? Because Williams knows that he was the one who was outside. Because Han's making like this big announcement, like somebody was off grounds yesterday, and Williams is like, oh shit. And he feels like he's probably going to have to fight Bolo, but he doesn't care. He doesn't like how Bolo's basically disposing of these pretty much innocent people who just couldn't freaking beat Bruce Lee because he's fucking Bruce Lee, right?
Mm.
But those were really cool scenes in the movie too. I mean, I don't want to leave those out because it was like every scene in the movie is amazing. There's not one bad scene in the movie. It's perfect. It's a perfect movie.
Everything is just amazing.
It is. Anything else that you can think of? Are you tapped out? Are you in a submission hold by Bruce Lee right now?
No, I don't know the name of the in the beginning that Bruce Lee is talking with, but I guess everybody knows who I'm referring to.
Yeah, he's a teacher. He's like a Shaolin teacher, yeah.
Yes, so this will be like a small emo moment. He passed away. Brathwaite, the officer, whatever he is, that tells Bruce Lee to go to the island.
Yeah, the British intelligence guy, yeah.
His name is Jeffrey Weeks, I believe. Then we have Peter Archer, who plays Parsons, the bully. And then Shi Qian, the one who plays Han. I don't know, maybe Jeff will be able to say how we're supposed to pronounce it. Then we have Tanya, the one blondie where Roper gets, a relationship with. Her name is Anna Capri. Of course, Roper, John Saxon. Jim Kelly, who plays Williams, and Bruce Lee, who plays Lee. They all passed away. And
So, what are we gonna do because they passed away? You want to do a moment of silence, right?
yeah, I thought that would be just, because they have, well, some of them saw the impact that the movie left, but they really changed many people in generations. So yeah, I think they really all they are part of a legacy. And
Yeah, you know what, Sana? That's a really good idea. You talked about it with me earlier today. I think we definitely should do it. And I just want to add one more thing before we're gonna silence the mics here for how long do you think? Like 30 seconds or so? Just a moment.
yeah.
Um, I just want to say this. And I told you this. I appreciate all of them who didn't get a chance, or some of them got to see the impact of this. But for me, this is just for me. Like I want to dedicate this moment of silence to all of them. But first and foremost, for me, this is for Bruce because he was just, you know, legendary, and he is a man that I still hold near and dear to my heart. So for 30 seconds, guys, we're gonna go mute, and we're gonna go all black. We turn the cameras off too. All right, let's do it here for 30 seconds. We're back.
Mhm.
So hey, thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in to the CinemAsian episode 6 stream with Sanimation05. Sana, amazing as always.
And thank you, Mom, for introducing me to Bruce Lee.
And no, Sana, thank you for the inspiration and allowing me to do this. I know we kind of did this last minute, so I appreciate you being like, yeah, go ahead and do it. I love it, So thanks for that.
Oh, thank
And,
you too.
oh yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, this is we talk about it all the time.
We keep
It,
thanking each other.
we are, but you know what? It's crazy. Her and I talk about this like daily. It's like you know what? It's hard to find somebody. For me, anyway, it's been hard, and I think she can say the same thing. If you want to add anything, Sana, please do. Uh, who actually has an appreciation like us, like the same kind of like level-headedness and the same ground and the same stuff about this culture and these movies that we absolutely love. I'm not saying that we're the only two people in the world who love it, but
I hope not.
yeah, the way we talk about it and the way we bounce ideas off of each other is super refreshing to me, and I love it. So, Sana, thanks again for that. Like, it's amazing. I appreciate you being on here. And, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Shifu.
Yeah. What's Chris Tucker say in Rush Hour? Shishia, Nihame. He's like, and then there's outtakes in the movie with Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan's like, my English, you cannot say 3 words Chinese. It's so funny. I love it. But everybody in the chat, you guys too, thank you. Sean,
Thank
thanks, bro.
you.
Really appreciate you coming on, man. Keys, namaste, brother. Thank you so much, man. Louie, always, bro. Always a pleasure having you, man. You are a champion. Jeff, I'm going to show this comment, brother. Bruce was a cha-cha champion Chinese opera, so a dancer and a singer, as well as a martial artist. That's amazing.
Chinese opera is amazing. This is one of the reasons why I started doing hair and makeup in high school because I was always so infatuated by the geisha and the Chinese opera makeup. And I was like, oh.
Amazing. Amazing.
Mm.
Jeff, that was an awesome fun fact, man. Thank you for bringing that up. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Who else do we got in here? Did I miss anybody?
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. Oh, there's one more person here I missed. Oh, it's Sanimation. Due to some technical difficulties, it's clear and plain. Hey, thanks, Sanne. Yeah. But hey, guys, thanks for tuning in to the Enter the Dragon stream. We are probably, Sanne and I were talking about this. We're probably going to do some more Bruce Lee stuff down the road, but here's what we think we're really going to do. We think we're really going to dedicate, like, I don't know, an entire month, maybe a few weeks at
November.
least. Yeah, November, because Bruce was born on November 27th.
Yeah.
So we're going to dedicate November that month to Bruce Lee. So it's going to be like a happy Thanksgiving, Bruce Lee, enjoy Kung Fu movie kind of thing.
And Brandon.
And Brandon as well. We're going to do like the whole Lee family. We're going to talk about like his life. I got some books actually I have back here, but I'm going to bust them out and save them for that when I talk more about his art style. I'm probably going to read some quotes from it, some of the stuff he actually wrote and said. So I'm really, really looking forward to that because, as you guys know, he's legendary. You know, my number one hero of all time. So, everybody, take care. Remember, there is no I and there is no opponent. And Sanne, remember, fear is for others, right?
And be like water.
I don't have any water, but if I did, you know what? Salute. Thanks, Sanne. Everybody
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
And see you next week, episode 7 and 8.
Episode 7 and 8. We're still ironing the kinks out for that, but we will keep you posted and let you know.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
Exciting
everybody.
stuff.
Absolutely. Remember, be like water, my friends. Later.